Hi, my name is Bruce Miller, and I'm with Rimtech Consulting, and I'm here to talk briefly about our course, Software Ready Retention Schedules for Canadian Government Agencies. This is a one-day online virtual course, and we call it a foundation course, which means that it's split into two halves. The first half is about EDRMS in general, which you need to know in order to deal with the retention schedule, and the second half is about the retention schedule in detail. So now the first thing you might be wondering is, well, what's wrong with our existing retention schedule? Short answer is nothing. Long answer is everything. So what's the issue here? Well, the issue is that you need to restructure it. You're not throwing out any retention rules or citations. Instead, you have to realize that the retention schedule that you're using today is written by records people for records people and end users, but those end users have to read it and interpret it. We can't allow that in a modern EDRMS. Why? Because if we allow that, people won't do it correctly. You won't get the necessary classification accuracy, and you'll never be able to do a disposition downstream. Okay? So in order to successfully deploy an EDRMS, we have to automate it fully so that users are not involved in record keeping. So how does that translate to the retention schedule? Well, it means that you have to restructure it, not throw it out, but restructure it. How? Well, there are three ways we're going to have to restructure it. The first is case records or event-driven records. You have to explicitly specify every record category that's a case record because the software needs to be told that in order to deal with it properly. It has to apply different rules to case records. And case records, by the way, are a minimum 60% of all your records. Second reason is it has to be machine readable. We're going to automate this system. In order to automate it, that means that the software will read the retention schedule, not the users. Okay? In fact, you need to have a retention schedule that no user will ever see, think about, or interact with. Okay? And the third reason is it has to be software actionable, which means that the software has to be able to interpret every retention rule in there and mechanically act on it and apply the proper rule at the right time. So now that's a very different looking retention schedule. Okay. So this particular course is tailored to the Government of Canada, where we know that you have standardized categories for administrative activities from Library and Archives Canada, so we have to deal with those. But you also have lots and lots of business activities that are unique to your agency, whoever you are. And you also have to deal with those as well. So we're going to look at both. Okay. Now, the first half of the day will be covering EDRMS fundamentals because there's no point in learning how to restructure a retention schedule unless you know why. And you'll only know why when you know how EDRMS projects work. So in the morning, we're going to cover the basics, which is how do you measure these things, these EDRMS projects, and prove that they're successful? So we're going to dig into the numbers behind them. What does a SharePoint information architecture look like? Why do we need to know that? Because the retention schedule drives the information architecture. The two are closely linked. What is the information architecture? It's the answer to this question. Where do we store our stuff in SharePoint? How many libraries do we need? What do we need to call them? How many content types do we need? What metadata do we need? All that is driven by the retention schedule, okay? So we'll dig into that. We'll cover case records, what are they and how to deal with them. And importantly, the two lethal threats to any EDRMS project. Either one of these two mistakes, if you make them, I guarantee you your system will fail. And there's a possibility that you might go down with it. You never know. We'll cover email and why it's so important. Why is it important? Because 4/5 of all your records, your digital records, are email. Massive. We'll cover the roles of the players in the project, and we'll learn about how to automate. Now you're ready to take that retention schedule and restructure it. That's the afternoon session, and we'll talk about how to deal with case records, how to deal with value-based retention. In the old days, we had a restriction. one retention rule per business activity, and that was it. Not anymore. You can have as many as you want. So what you can do now is you can have a retention rule based on the value of the digital records. So you can get rid of lesser value records earlier and hang on to higher value ones longer. Okay. And that's all driven by metadata. So you need to understand how to use metadata and apply it in the retention schedule. Okay. The retention automation. How do you automate? Now, there are 5 different products on the market. This training doesn't care, and it doesn't matter which of the 5 you choose to use. You don't even need to decide which one. Everything you learn in this course will be vendor neutral, and we can talk at length about any of the 5 you want to know, okay? But no matter which of the 5 you use, that retention schedule still has to change, okay? So we'll talk about how the software expects you to automate those retention rules. We'll talk about the modes of every single business activity in the retention schedule. Those modes are common, shared, or local. And those are 3 behaviors of those activities inside SharePoint. We'll talk about how to build in privacy protection. That's important these days and getting more important every day. And how to write some sample automated retention rules. We'll also quantify how many you're going to need and how long it'll take you to do it. So that's it. And in the description below, you'll see 3 links. One to a document with more detail on this course, one to our schedule of all our training courses, and a third link to register if you're interested. Thank you.